What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to a model airplane review. I'm your host, Ray. Today I'll be reviewing the NG model 1-400 scale Spirit Airlines Airbus A319, item number 49022, released in August of 2023. In this video, I'll do an in-depth review of the model. Afterwards, I will give my opinion on the model and I will decide whether or not I recommend it to other collectors. The box for this model is a cardstock box. The protective packaging on the inside is clear plastic. This box measures 12.7 centimeters long, 3.6 centimeters wide, and 12.8 centimeters tall. I will show you around the box now. This is the front. Here's the bottom. There we go. Right side, top, left side, and the back side. Included in the box is the model fully assembled, painted, and ready to display. Also included is this NG model Collector Rewards Program card. I'll give you guys a quick 360 of the model. The fuselage length for this model is 8.3 centimeters, the wingspan is 8.4 centimeters, and the height is 3 centimeters. These dimensions are accurate to 1-400 scale. This model is made primarily out of die-cast metal. There is also some plastic components, and the wheels on the landing gear are made out of rubber. Let's look at the fuselage first. The nose profile on this model looks really good. It's accurate to the Airbus A319. The rest of the fuselage has a lot of detail on it. Not too much going on in terms of paint application because the only paint going on here is just the yellow livery. There's a lot of printed detail going on and it all looks pretty good. The Spirit title there looks nice with the scratches in the logo. Those are accurate because Spirit's early yellow logo had those scratches. So far so good. Here's the vertical stabilizer. This looks really good. No complaints about it. It's got a lot of detail on it. It's got two different colors of paint on it. Of course, it's got the yellow, but then it has the silver leading edge. The Spirit title looks great, and there's a lot of recessed panel line detail on this vertical stabilizer. Looks pretty good. Here is the right side of the aircraft. It's pretty much the same thing as the left side, and I have no complaints about the right side. So far, we're off to a solid start. The wings on this model look pretty good as well. They're very nicely detailed. They have recessed panel line details for the control surfaces. You can see the ones on the trailing edge here. They're all clearly defined, none of which are filled in with paint. Good to see. The leading edge slats also have recessed panel line details for them. This looks pretty good. The painted detail looks good. The gray colors on the wing looks good. And the printed detail looks pretty nice as well. No inaccuracies that I can think of or point out here. And there are no quality control issues on the wings either, which looks pretty nice. The seam between the wing and the fuselage is pretty smooth as well. I do see a small bit of yellow paint at the tip of the wing right here. It's nothing terrible though, so I won't gloss over it too much. In terms of the fence tip wingtips, these are also really nice. The shape and size is very accurate, and that looks really good. They're not set at an angle or anything. They're not bent, so the quality with these is really good as well. The horizontal stabilizers on this model are also pretty nice. There's some printed detail at the top here, but there's really no printed detail on the bottom. What definitely makes up for it is, once again, the recessed panel line detail. Just like the vertical stabilizer, these feature a lot of recessed panel line detail, and it looks pretty good. The seam with the fuselage looks decent. I do see a slight gap from the underside, but on the top side, the gap between the horizontal stabilizers and the fuselage is pretty much negligible. The APU on this model is a physical hole here. It has an exhaust hole, which is very uncommon for a 1-400 scale aircraft, let alone an aircraft as small as the Airbus A319, so this is a really nice detail to see. NG was absolutely knocking this model out of the park, but with the engines, this is where they run into some trouble. The pylons for the engines are made out of plastic, and this is due to NG, I believe, wanting to include more detail as well as make production easier, but this makes the pylons really flimsy and more susceptible to damage. So yeah, you can see that there. And if you were to bend the pylon enough, it would kind of permanently morph into a bent pylon, which definitely is not optimal. With regards to the engines themselves, the shape of them are good, and overall the details from the top side look pretty good and accurate. So there's that. And then here is the fan detail for the engines. The fan detail is actually really nice for a 1:400 scale A319. That's pretty nice to see. The hot section of the engine as well looks really cool, painted in multiple different colors of silver metallic paint. Now where the engines suffer is the underside. Down here on IAE engines for the A320 family, there's this section of the exhaust, or the hot section, that is shaped like a rectangle with a triangle on top of it. This part of the hot section is missing from this model, and I verified with real images of the real aircraft that this section is missing, and yes, that is a missing detail from this model, which is very surprising considering that NG doesn't usually screw up on details like that, but I guess they messed this one up. Now, is it a big deal? In my opinion, no, but still, it is something worthy of mentioning. Now, also, there was some paint, I'm not sure what this is, but some staining here on the right engine, so that was also very weird to see. This model features antennae, no sat domes, there doesn't need to be any. The antennae on this model are quite small, which is accurate to this aircraft. The antennae are small at this size. Here's a large one right up here at the front of the aircraft, and there's two more in the rear. There's a large one here and then a small one. These all look pretty good. However, all of them are attached at a slight angle. You can see that this antenna right here is bent off to the right side of the aircraft. We will see this better later in the video. On the underside, there's also this one antenna right here. This one isn't attached at an angle. This looks pretty good. Here's the underside of the aircraft. There is definitely a lot of printed detail on the underside of the fuselage here, which is nice to see. It's good that NG takes care of detailing down here. This model also suffers a little bit in the landing gear department, but definitely not as hard as it did with the engines. So the landing gear on this model is quite nice. As mentioned earlier, the wheels are made out of rubber and all three of them do roll, which is a nice feature to see. Now the first gripe I have with the landing gear is the main gear are mounted perfectly straight and perpendicular to the fuselage. They should be angled slightly backwards, ever so slightly. So I think being mounted straight up isn't as big of an issue, but what this causes is that if you were to hit the model or bump the table your model is sitting on, it will fall over like that. It can stand on its own, but it's very easy to knock it off balance, is what I'm trying to say with that. So, like I said, not a huge deal, but it does have some practical effects with it. In terms of the gear themselves, the main gear are quite nice. They are detailed, but I do see that some of the gaps in the gear legs and support structures are filled in with, I think, flash from production, which that isn't too great to see. The nose gear is pretty good as well. It is angled forward, which is accurate to the A320 family. I believe this one is angled maybe a little bit too forward, but not by too much, so I won't make any assumptions. And as mentioned earlier, yes, the wheels do roll. So overall, the landing gear are definitely not perfect, but they're decent. Time for a staring contest. Here is the view of the front of the plane. Cockpit window printing looks slightly slanted towards the left side, not by much though, definitely not as bad as other models, so that's nice to see. Wing flex is good, engine clearance is good, gear balance is good. Vertical stabilizer placement might be a little bit off to the left as well, nothing terrible though. What I do want to point out here once again is how the antennas on the top section of the aircraft are mounted kind of with a bend towards the right. That's what I was talking about earlier. That concludes my review. It is now time for my opinion and recommendation. So I think this is a pretty decent model. Now, it is far from perfect. The missing hot section on the underside of the engines might be a big deal to some collectors, and I totally do not blame those of you who would prefer not to buy this model because of that. For me personally, it's not a huge deal, but once again, it could affect other people differently. Now, quality on these, from what I've been able to determine, was pretty decent, but it definitely wasn't perfect, and we saw that with the staining on the underside of the right engine. Still though, this is a pretty nice model. It's nicely detailed. The quality on it, yeah, it seemed consistent, mostly just the paint wasn't great in terms of staining and stuff. So I do recommend this model if you're willing to put up with the inaccuracy of the hot section. Otherwise, it's quite fantastic and the mold is excellent. I think this is the best 1:400 scale Spirit A319 we've seen so far. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out my channel for more model airplane reviews. And that's it. Like, comment, and subscribe. Happy building, happy collecting. Stay tuned for more model airplane content, and I'll see you next time. Take care.